I know the topic is around shame, things like that, but also want to focus a little bit on how we unlearn that shame. And just, I think you shared a lot about yourself. I think it's only fair that I share some about myself to level the playing field. So as a cis heterosexual woman, it can seem like, oh, what do I have in common with Anas? And I think the little bit of crossover maybe that I have is I'm a South Asian unmarried woman who chose to willingly move out of the family home and live independently. And this is also something that my family actually hides from other people. This is a secret which is hidden, and I forget it's hidden sometimes. And when we go to like see relatives in other cities, like we were at Birmingham once, and Mum was, as we went to people's houses, she was like, "Don't tell them, we haven't told them." They don't know, so just like, you know, and it's like, this is a bit mad because I'm actually looking to buy a house now, so I'm like, what are we going to tell them about the house? If like, and so this is something I constantly have to remember to keep a secret when I go places, which is people don't know this thing. And it's something that's very, it's very shameful that you've done, and it's quite very taboo that you've done this, like, to have moved out, because the initial assumption is the reason you're living independently is because you're probably, there's naturally assumed you have a man, you've got a boy, you're doing dirty sex things with your boy. And it's like, oh, I mean,
some of us are, but
some of us, yeah, you're mostly just watching Netflix in peace and quiet for a change. But yeah, that's kind of how I personally come to relate very strongly to the Instagram account when I found it and those type of things. And feeling very validated and seen and relating quite strongly to a lot of the messages and the, like, because with the Instagram it shares kind of not just understanding the culture and where things come from, then also like the tools a little bit as well, how to navigate it as well. So
I just wanted to add that South Asian women, and especially queer men in and just the queer community in general in South Asian culture, we have so many parallels, you know, in a way, little things like self-expression is something we both compromise.
I'm dressed like a sinner today, in case you're unaware. Mother.
So am I. It's all see-through here. But you know, there's so many parallels in how we sort of move, and I think it creates this really beautiful solidarity that we have between us, and I'm glad that you're here today.
Thank you. This is actually our first time meeting in person.
I know.
Like, yeah, we just bonded on Instagram.
It's very Gen Z.
Gen Z of us, yeah, it is, it's true. So I'll kick off with a first proper question of like, what has helped you in terms of like aspirations or inspirations along the way? Because for me, it's been Project Besharam. So what was it for you?
I had a friend whose name is Fatima, and we both moved out from Bradford at the exact same time. Went to university together, and it was so strange. We were going through the exact same seasons of life together, and we would have these conversations together, and they were so similar. And I remember thinking that wouldn't it be amazing if we did a podcast one day? And then she went on to do her career things, but she's been such a huge inspiration for me. She gave me a safe space to talk about my issues, and because she was from my culture, because she went to my high school, because she was from Bradford, there was just this level of understanding I would not have gotten anywhere else. Many people try, and they, with the best of intentions, they try and empathize for you and try and understand you, but unless you've had that lived experience, I really believe it's hard to connect on that level. So
I think it's such a niche experience, like, even despite us having stuff in common, the fact that we group in different postcodes and have an age gap it still massively impacts our lived experience.
Definitely.
So
And when you mentioned your living space, all I was thinking was the amount of times you must have to think about that over and over again. Because in the grand scheme of things, it feels very small. However, you can't say simple things like, oh, I went to IKEA to buy this for my house.
I did it by accident when I went to
You
Birmingham.
can't- you
And I
can't
suddenly
say-
outed myself as an independent woman. I mentioned buying stuff in a Debenham sale. Then she went to the kitchen, she's like, and as we were leaving the car, like, did you speak to Khadija? I'm like, what did I do? Like, she didn't know, you know. Like, oh shit. I've accidentally mentioned containers from Debenhams. And I outed myself. I'm like, yeah, it's really true. I forget, I get in trouble, I get told off.
Yeah.
Like,
So that's such a little thing, but
Yeah.
it's not a little thing, but you get what I mean.
but for me, the repercussions now are very like, the risk is very low. Because I think I'm moving towards buying a house, the level of what's the word?
Can we just give her a round of,
Respectability.
can we just give her a round of applause for buying a house? Like, I feel like she deserves that.
I'm on my way. We're getting there. Letters come, I sign though. But the level of respectability in owning property, which because with flat, it's very like, what is she doing? Or with house, like, oh, is she on the property ladder? Like, so it seems I'm moving away from that. And my reputation is almost like self-healing itself through that process, which is unintentional. But I'll definitely find ways to stay Besharam.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we all have it in us.
yeah, but you're right. Like, it is a constant thing you're doing. And you mentioned that you're constantly coming out to people on a daily basis in different small or big ways, which I think we can sometimes forget. And it's definitely a challenge and something that you're constantly navigating, and it's a permanent presence of a thing to do, which I think people forget about. But yeah, it's really nice to hear you have like a friend like Fatima who has that experience, that person for you, because not everyone does. And
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
How lucky we are. Another follow-up question would be, what do you want to see in the community to change? If there was one thing to maybe make things a little bit better, easier moving forward?
I think in general, we've got to this point in our community, and I think in general anyway, where we tend to raise awareness, but it doesn't really manifest into action. And I noticed a lot of Instagram accounts, because there's a lot more South Asian spaces online now than there were like maybe even 2-3 years ago. And I noticed that sometimes we're very much stuck on the issues, and sometimes while that's really validating, it can also be very depressing. Sometimes you need to think of creative solutions, and that's what I try and do with my page. I try and reframe things, I try and create new terminologies, I try and make an active, like what you can do right now. You know, one of the posts that come to mind is how to set boundaries with your parents when you're living at home. Something simple as not, being upstairs in your room by a certain time. That, okay, by 9 p.m. I won't be interacting with my parents anymore downstairs. It's a very simple thing. So I feel like that disconnect between, we have the awareness now and it's amazing, but we need to manifest it into creating solutions that are unique to us and work for us. So that's really important to me.
Is there any solutions or things you feel people could start doing, or actions they could start taking to kind of help that progress move forward just a little bit?
I think within our friendship groups, to have the conversations, firstly, because they're not had very often. You'll be very surprised how people who've known each other for a very long time do not know much about each other. And then to find ways to reaffirm each other on an everyday basis in a small little ways. For me, it meant that now in the presence of Fatima, if we were out and I saw an extremely hot guy, I could now point it out without having to think twice. It meant that when she saw something like a really cute pride bracelet, she would buy me it. It's those small little things. I'm sure I've done them for her as well. Like it's and vice versa. Trying to encourage her, like to try new clothes. Things that she wouldn't wear normally. That's too revealing. I'm like, no, you look great in that. Like, and I wish I had that figure so I could wear it, but you know, I don't think I'd be wearing clothes if I had her figure, but that's a different story. But yeah, so just finding ways to affirm each other in a day-to-day basis. It shouldn't, and it doesn't need to be one big thing. You know, I don't need you to hold man and be like, you're gay and you're enough. Like I see you. Like I see you. Like no, I just need you to be there through like the small moments, to listen when things are not going so great, and to remind me that the way I am is fine and it's okay if I'm not always okay.
Definitely, I have to agree. Open conversations with friends, and I have to say from my personal experience, all it takes is one person to open up. Before you know it, like the entire friend group starts opening up. It doesn't have to be like specifically sexuality, because everything's linked, isn't it? Definitely. So like when one person talks about mental health and a challenge they're going through, before you know it, every other friend was like, oh yes, I'm on sertraline, and oh yes, I have therapy. Like, what? We're all depressed. No one talked about it. Like, people, it's quite amazing when people open up about a subject like sexuality and sex and
so
mental
much
health.
relationships.
Because I think, especially within, because people don't know what they talk about, especially within South Asian friend groups, because there's levels of religiosity. You don't know what they're okay talking about and what they're not okay.
And I think there's also this stereotype that it's only the old generation. I find a lot of the younger generation can also perpetuate those behaviors, and it's because it's what they've known, right? Like, if you've been raised a certain way, if you've only been taught a certain thing, you can only expect that. And I think we need to be mindful of that as well, that we need that instead of just looking to these older people and the old generation amongst one another, correct each other, or and it doesn't need to be done in a harsh way. It can be done from a place of compassion or curiosity, asking questions. What makes you think that? You know, for me, something so rewarding was hearing a friend of mine who grew up going to the mosque every day and is now was dating a trans man, and hearing him have a conversation about trans rights and the Olympics with another South Asian boy who's never been exposed to any of this. So just hearing conversations take place, it makes all the difference, I think.
It's a massive part, I think, of moving forward and seeing those small changes. Speaking of changes and support, do you think for support for gay and queer people is informed by, is it possibly a white-centric Besharam? Do you think, so in terms of like support for gay and queer people out there, what do you make of what is currently existing, and what do you think about the fact that is it possibly white-centric, Eurocentric in the way it's presented, and could it be challenged?
I think there's a room to have balance. Part of my identity is that I'm British, South Asian, so I find that, I think what's happened recently in our community, I think we spoke about this earlier, is that in order, because of this message of coming out, the opposite end has been, oh, we don't need to come out forever. And next thing you know, you're 45 and sitting with a cat alone in your home. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But
we're not judging for you cats.
No,
it's okay.
That was the wrong crowd. Okay. But as in what I mean by that is sometimes hiding behind that I don't want to come out.
It can be used as an excuse.
It can use more than an excuse. It's sort of it's a disservice to your own self. You're sort of not letting yourself experience these things and progress and that's all it is at the end of the day. Do things that work for you. I'm such, more than coming out, for me it's important that people do things, however, by whichever means they need to. I made a post called Little Brown Lies, and it's that the concept that being able to tell the truth without consequence is a privilege in our community. So whatever means you need to do what you need to, do it. But I think a balance.
Definitely. There is like, talk around like coming out is a Eurocentric movement, and the amount of focus that is on coming out as being seen as a form of progression, and it's the only route. You must declare yourself to everyone, and it's not always possible because the consequences can be quite serious for a lot of people, and the amount of loss, the amount of things you lose. We talked about the family circles and isolation that can occur. Homelessness. It is can be quite severe for some people, and so coming out isn't always doable for everyone, but it's doable in different ways. And I think there are people out there who might be. I know some people find it confusing, like, oh, you're out to this group, but you're not out to that group. And it's like, it's very possible to be out at work, to be out to your friends, but not out to your family. And it's okay to do that because once upon a time you were not out to any of those people. So there is progress in that. And it's complicated and tricky, and it's very it's a new territory almost.
It is, and when those two worlds collide, that's, it's like, please watch what you say around my parents, and that's its own sort of minefield. But I find that the right people will honour sort of that privacy and that situation. You tend to do it growing up as a brown kid anyway, because especially growing up socially and religiously conservative, you'd have the quick debrief with your friend before you entered the family home. So this is the strategy. The game plan.
This is the game plan. This is the backstory. We're going to so-and-so's house, they're going to do this, and we're going to stay at their house, and she might call on this time, but don't worry about it. And she brings up that thing, I was with you last week. You were? And the amount of times I walked in and like a bunch of girls were like, if anyone asks, we're with you, and I'm like, you were doing what? I said, okay, you're walking like, so auntie, and she starts having a conversation, like yes, auntie. We were, we did, and you were.
And that goes back to what I was saying about us helping each other. I feel like things like that.
Sometimes you have to play around with some brown lights, become very creative, and developing storylines.
There's a whole context, it's like fan fiction.
And it's very true, having friends who can have those kind of moments of like, this is what we're doing today. Like, yes, I consent to this lie. Fabulous, let's do it. But yeah, it does. It's very important because it emancipates you to go out and have those experiences in a safe way. Because the alternative is a way to go away and do it secretly on your own.
Yes.
And that's also being transgressive, not rebellious, and not being able to share it with people isn't fun. Like, you need to be able to share it. It makes it fun to be able to come and say, let me tell you what it is. And everyone's like, tell us. But yeah, definitely the little brown lies can be fun. That brings us on to, you mentioned the double life stuff, and like we both do it in different ways. So I think are there any ways where you like try to hold on to who you are, like, because for me personally, like, you go and you give a little bit of yourself there, you give a little bit of yourself there, and you compartmentalize it all. For me, I refer to it as like a jigsaw, so like you give away all your pieces, and you got to do stuff to put yourself back together. Is there ways that you have that you kind of like maintain who you are?
So like, fortunately now, like that I've come out, I'm on the other end of it. But when I wasn't, it's like cosplay. I had two separate wardrobes. Like I was sort of like cosplaying as myself, I think. And you create these two really distinct identities. And I think one thing that you need to be able to hold on to is you need to reaffirm yourself.
Yeah.
Like when I was visiting home, I made sure I was in contact with friends from out of town. I made sure I carried books with me to read. Mm-hmm. I made sure trying to find moments of things that reconnect me to who I am, writing things down. I feel like a lot of people overlook the importance of like writing things down. I'm a huge believer in sort of getting it out, and it exists now. It's not just in your mind, it exists on paper. But yeah, just constantly grounding yourself. And for me, when I was visiting home, I would prepare myself beforehand, and I would also allow for recovery time when I was going back. It's not easy to snap out of one mindset and go back to another. You have to ease your way into it in both ways. So that's all what I recommend.
Is there any words you want to leave us with?
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh yeah, questions. Hi.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for giving that talk. It was really interesting to hear what you had to say. You mentioned about preparing yourself when you would go from your home life and then back to your friends, and you change your mindset and give yourself time to breathe. What did you do in that moment? Like, how would you prepare yourself and go from one to the other?
So there was two different things happening. So when you're going from, I'm assuming, are you at university or
no?
Have you moved out or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when I was away at Brighton, my two worlds were Brighton and Bradford. Start with the same bloody letters as well, don't they? I gave myself maybe 2 or 3 days to start. I would start ringing home and getting used to speaking to them. Getting used to, because for me, like in my day-to-day life, I don't raise my voice at anyone. I have a lot of more effective communication. Sometimes when you're listening to your parents, it goes on, and you have to have a level of patience for that. So I would start maybe calling more frequently, like the week before, to get used to that sort of tone. I'd start planning things ahead of time, like while I'm there, what am I going to be doing? I don't want to be sat around like in the house doing absolutely nothing. I want to be able to plan, like meet maybe some high school friends. Maybe another day I want to go out for a meal with someone. What it does is it helps you occupy your time there. So you're able to spend some time with family, and then you're allowed to get a bit of a breather in between as well. And on the way back, what I would do is the exact same thing. I'd have things planned back where I was going. Like, okay, I'm going to have a chill day tomorrow. Like, now that I've come back, taken the train, tomorrow is a day to myself. I'm going to watch like Netflix, Gossip Girl. You know, that's going to be my day tomorrow. So just giving whatever that looks like for you, planning ahead of time, occupying your time, and sort of letting yourself breathe is like the most simplest way I can put it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's right.
I used to try to remember the type of things, that triggers that my mum would say that make you feel guilty, and then remembering to expect to hear that litany of like kind of guilt-inducing stuff, and then remembering to forget it. Like, she's gonna say this, but it's okay, we're gonna forget it because it's not true. She's gonna say this, but we're gonna forget this, and it's not true. And like, because every time you hear it, you can feel like you're getting shot every time. Like, oh, yeah. There's another one. There's another one.
And what you can control is, you can't control what they say, but you can control how you respond.
Absolutely, definitely.
And it'll empower you so much more when you realise that.
Yeah. I know one thing was leaving, because in the beginning when I'd come back to the flat and it'd be on my own, I'm like, oh God, I'm on my own. You miss the buzz of the home and all the families, even though they're so annoying. You like actually do miss that buzz. I know that would be another thing with having stuff planned to come home to, and stuff to look forward to. Yeah. So when you're planning stuff like friends to look forward to. When you're coming back home in the other environment, having stuff planned to look forward to again. Yeah. Even if it is just going to see a friend for coffee or going for a walk with another friend, because then you'll find yourself processing your time with them. Yeah. And I find that really helpful.
I think a lot of us who've come from dysfunctional families, we can attest to the fact that it's not usually just bad things happening. At least in my home, there was a lot of emotional instability. So like one moment we were fine and we were all enjoying each other's company, and within moments that changed, and it was so hard to catch up with it. And then it's confusing because it's like, is my family bad or not? Like, you know, they do X, Y, and Z for me. You know, they cook amazing. When you come home, you're literally treated like you know, royalty.
Yeah. Like my mum's like, do you want anything? Should we cook anything? Yeah. Like, she started listing everything in the fridge. Like everybody's like it's a shopping list. We got this. I'm like, that's okay.
We got this for you. You need to eat this. Like, eat more. You've not eaten properly while you were out at uni. You know. Yeah. And especially with South Asian culture, there's a massive focus on like deifying your parents. Yes. And there's sayings like heaven lies at the feet of your mother, and things like that. So like. I'm often the first to say there's nothing wrong. I don't believe in evangelicizing your parents. Like, they are flawed people, and we're allowed to say that. And sometimes you have to find the right friend to confide that in. Like, Mom, such a C word today. God, and they're all a bunch of expletives today. Like, I'm venting. It's like, but at the same time, we would say, you know what, it was quite nice. She did these things for me. That was lovely too, but
she mentioned that thing again, and that set me off. And then I ended up yelling at them. I think now I feel bad because I yelled at my parents.
I haven't spoken to my family in the last 6 months, so I want to like make that clear as well, that if it reaches a point where you will know when it reaches that point where it's not worth investing in that, and that's okay too. You know, there's only so much effort you can put in from your end until you sort of realize that I need to step back and get some perspective and give myself some time as well, because I feel like it's unfortunate because we have so much awareness, so we feel like we have to do something about it.
So it's a responsibility to educate and save the masses.
Educate and save the masses, exactly. But sometimes you've got to save yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And let them educate.
It can't come at cost of your own well-being.
No.
It's like, it's interesting because, have a strategy.
Yeah.
Like even for this weekend, I have a strategy. The night I'm going to go, how long I'm going to stay, on what, like planning stuff for myself too. I don't feel like every weekend is lost to obligating family responsibilities and such. But definitely well-being first.
And your friends are your chosen family, is what I always like to say. You know, there's, in our community especially, there's this, and in general in society, there's such a focus on this nuclear family and blood is thicker than water, but listen, you die without water after 3 days, so you know, there's not much difference.
Also, it's work, and it's not going to magically manifest itself. I think that's the thing. You do have to work at creating that family, friends who are like family for you, and it will come through like sharing, and like because you all start empathizing and opening up to each other, and you build it. Like the family, the friends that we have who are like family, is something we've built.
The more you give, the more you'll get back. Is what I found in these scenarios.
Thank you, Anas. Any other questions?
I think the third is talking.
I think we've talked enough. Thank you everyone for coming. Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully you found it inspiring and useful today, listening to us chat.
If anyone wants to discuss anything one-on-one or like about the page or anything, just come to me. Like, I know it's in a group setting, sometimes it's harder to talk, so by any means just come to me. I'll stick around for a bit.
And thank you, Anas, for giving us your time today. It's been lovely. And hopefully more chats in the future. In real life. I see you.
I see you.
Now link our brains. That's very old team. Thank you again. Can we have a round of applause?